Alrighty, guys. I cannot wait for this one to get started. This is going to be a very special show. Been looking forward to this one for a while now. Um, we are going to be joined by a helicopter pilot today. Like I told y'all, we're going to try and get into a little bit of the air aspect of Vietnam and SOG. So we are really blessed today to be joined by a Lancer who supported CCN. Uh, and his name is Mr. Bill Walker. He was Lancer 17, and he is here to share with us his story and a little bit of the Lancer history. So, Mr. Bill, it's all yours, sir.
Hey, thank you, Bud. And I'm very flattered that you set this up. Thank you very much. Yeah, Bill Walker. To, I joined up rather than be drafted in. I didn't want to sleep on the ground with snakes more than anything else. So when I got to Vietnam, I was sent into the Lancers, which is Company B, 158th Assault Helicopter Battalion, the 101st Airborne Division. On my orientation ride, we were based in Camp Evans. That was in February of 70 when I arrived. The Lancers had already been there for a year. We replaced the original Lancers. But on my original orientation ride that day, my captain, my platoon leader, showed me the area. Granite was a hot area, the Rocket Ridge, where the mountains went up from the flatlands. We were roughly 40 miles from Ashaw Valley at our base camp. But anyway, it was dusk, and I was a stupid green pilot, and he was flying near where there was happened to be a battle going on the side of Firebase Granite, and I made a stupid comment. I said, "Man, it's great how they're putting down suppressive fire for us." And I thought he was going to smack me. He said, "Those are muzzle flashes. They're shooting at us." So that was kind of the initial experience going into Vietnam. And I was a co-pilot, flew all kind of missions. We started out flying based out of Quan Tri for some of that period of time. We flew killer missions. It was insertions and extractions from the DMZ with 5-man special forces, killer teams they were called, to monitor the crossings in the DMZ, which was a big misnomer. That was not demilitarized as far as the North was concerned. Those were very heady missions. We have a command and control aircraft, a whole bird, and a chase bird, and then 2 gunships. Most of the time, it'd be our sister company, the Redskins, Company D, 158, for support. And about a mile out from the insertion point, we would drop down to nap of the earth flying, which literally was at 90 knots, 100 knots at 3 to 4 feet off the ground. At that point, you're trying to dodge bushes. You don't navigate. So the command and control aircraft tells you when to turn, when to flare, and when to sit down. And when they tell you to flare and sit, I just remember holding on and grit your teeth. You're just waiting to take hits. We nearly always took fire on those, but most of the time we got out okay, and then once again getting them out was a little more exciting usually. So anyway, then other missions we had were to resupply the 2nd of 506, the 5th Mechanized Division, the 3rd Brigade. These were operating in and around the Ashaw Valley, and in the most of our missions were in the mountains. Incidentally, I don't know that we ever really won a mountain battle, and I don't think we ever lost a flatlands battle. So naturally, we did all of our fighting in the mountains. I always think that made me scratch my head. The very first SOG mission was for me, and I was still a co-pilot, but we flew out of, I think it was either Phu Bai or Da Nang, where the MACV compound was. And in fact, this one turned out different because this ended up being a rescue mission. There was a downed Navy pilot, I think he was a Navy pilot, deep in Laos. And they gave us blood script, it's called. I've I've got one here somewhere that it's a big scarf that it's printed in many languages, that if you get this man back to the Americans or friendlies, we'll give you like $500 or something like that, and so many languages. It was the first time I'd ever seen one of them. Yeah, that's it right there. And we were told that we get our escape and evade maps were to Thailand, because this was so far into Laos that we would only have 10 minutes on station, or we wouldn't have enough fuel to get back. So we went in at terrible weather. It was IFR conditions, really, but we flew between layers of clouds to get out. And it took a long time. We had to sign all the documents, of course, for SOG missions that you'll never talk about it. So I'll deny it if you ask. But anyway, we got it. We found the guy that was a forward air control, a FAC pilot, in a fixed wing aircraft that had located just where he was. It was way in there. And the M.R. Jones, who was the aircraft commander of the whole bird, that we were chase bird, did an incredible job of finding this guy and literally blowing a hole in the cloud to get down where we could get this guy out. And we got him out in less than 10 minutes, and came all the way back. It took a long time, and all of us were running on fumes at that point. But we got him out, and I remember, I'll never forget, the FAC pilot was going down the runway, flying low pass down the runway, doing barrel rolls over the success of that mission. Incidentally, we were awarded a letter of commendation from the Air Force for that mission. They couldn't describe what the mission was or anything else about it, but just that it was a successful mission. But since it was classified at the time, and they misspelled my name, and they got my Social Security number right and my RA number correct, but they misspelled my name, so I didn't get that letter of commendation for 30 something years. It didn't make any difference, but that was my first out of country mission. We wanted to fly other missions, CCN missions, SOG missions there, and also out of Quan Tri. Generally out of Quan Tri was through the Tri-Borders area and on west, which was roughly the same area as the Lamsan 719 missions that we ran out of there. The other missions for CCN, a couple of them I have very vivid memories of. In fact, I had one during the summer of '70. It seemed I flew a lot of the SOG missions, and we were pretty deep into Laos, and I was beginning my initial descent to the LZ. And my call sign was Lancer 17, and over the radio was an obviously Asian accented person saying, "Lancer 17, tonight you die," which caught all of us by surprise. This guy may have been 50 miles away. I don't know where he was, but it pissed me off too. And I said, "Tonight I'm going to rip your heart out through your mouth." You just react. It scared the heck out of me. They had to scrub the mission because we didn't know where this guy was, but obviously he was listening in on our transmissions. So I scrubbed the mission, and a few days later went back out again and did not have a repeat. And we had a device in the helicopters called a KY-17, which is a scrambling device for radio transmissions. Those missions again were incredible for the guys who went in and were on the ground. I don't know how they did that on a regular basis. And on that next one, had to put them down. Actually, had to rappel down. There was no open area. So through some triple canopy and on down, and then we just hovered. And then actually we got back. We were maybe 10 minutes out, and we got scrambled to go back and get them out again. Now these guys gotten in trouble. They were too close to the bad guys, and they were going to be vastly outnumbered. So I went back out and put them out on strings instead of ladders that time. Again, I don't know how those guys did it. They had to hang underneath the aircraft until I wouldn't stop somewhere until I knew it was secure. It had to be back in a safe area. The biggest nightmare would have been to set them down, in a bad area or enemy occupied area. We ran those periodically. In the meantime, the next day or even the same day, sometime we'd be running resupply missions or extractions. We weren't medevac aircraft, but if they were wounded, we would pick them up and take them out, get them back to a hospital, and then continue with the other missions. More personally difficult were those where you're carrying bodies, and that was not a rarity. That was pretty a pretty regular part of our job too. And we never carried a wounded with a body. Those were separate trips, separate sorties. I'm just telling you, we operated mostly in that northwest part of North Vietnam. For the SOG missions, they were west of Khe Sanh and to the north sometime too, through the tri-border area. It was a rich target area, put it that way. The Ho Chi Minh Trail really ran wide open just across the river into Laos and heading south. They would also cut through the A Shau. Part of the time they cut through Khe Sanh. And one of the things regarding Khe Sanh, we were called in and assigned to support the last Project Delta, which was the forerunner of the Delta Force. But this was in March and April and May. April and May of 1970. We slept in tents, and my first mission there, we had lost the whole crew and the command and control for the special forces, and including a Marine who was on that aircraft. The day before the aircraft was hit by an RPG, everyone was killed. That Captain Miller had been the most charismatic and brave, a wonderful man. And he was our platoon leader, and we were just devastated. I was pretty much a new first pilot, which meant I was flying as the aircraft commander, but I didn't have that. You have to prove yourself to that. And the day after, or that night when we learned about Captain Miller and his crew being killed, our company commander called me in and told me to pack my bags, take an aircraft and crew up to My Loc, which is on the east side of the mountain, at the base of that. Right over there were two ridges there, and right over that was Khe Sanh. That day, when I landed, I went into the TOC to get the briefing to to learn something about this mission. The Lancers who were there couldn't tell us what was going on either. They were not allowed to speak about it. So I was really, I didn't know what to expect. I'll be honest with you, I was scared too. I couldn't imagine Captain Miller and his crew going down, of all people. I can't replace him. Anyway, I went into the TOC and showing the map where the operating area was, and suddenly the siren blew. It was prairie fire, and everybody got really excited and started running. And they said, "Okay, 17, you take your aircraft. You can follow. You can see how we do our missions." Which went out in a triangle formation, a diamond formation. And so I okay, but I'm pretty frightened about it. But when I got out, they'd put the ladder on my aircraft, and I said, "Oh, wait a minute, that's the whole bird. Somebody else had taken it." They said, "No, we have to go. You go now." And I said, "Come on, I've never even seen one. I don't know these operators. I don't know how you run them." I said, "Just shut up, take off." And they gave me a handful of papers when I was taking off, and they did allow me to take a co-pilot that one of ours, a LANCER, 19 who had been there at Project Delta for 3 days. He was a co-pilot, and but at least he'd seen some of the operations there. I'm telling you, up front, they left out a few details. When we went in this formation, I was told that I was to do an high overhead approach, which means you pretty much spiral down from the sky into an LZ to try to minimize the amount of time you spend in the kill zone. It was elephant grass there, probably 18 feet deep. And the mission commander said, okay, look at the pages you've got there. They'll be using international orange panels to identify. And they said that has the design that this unit will have. They won't pop a smoke because it would give away their location right now, and they're being pursued already. So I saw this. That was pretty clear. When we got to the area, the command and control aircraft said, "Okay, they pointed. They said, there you are. You're 12 o'clock." He said, "Go ahead and begin your approach." He said, "There should be 7 of them. If there are more than 7, kill them all." And I said, huh. Say again? And he said, "If you heard me, if there are more than 7, you kill them all because they'll kill you if you don't." So we spiraled down and went into a hover. I did count, believe me, I counted several times on the way down. Went to a hover, and when you're hovering, you have to watch the horizon. You can't really pay much attention to anything else because you're trying to hold a fixed position over that pickup zone. So I could feel the guys coming up the ladder and the aircraft moving a little bit. And then my crew chief said, "Okay, we're up." And so I started coming out. And suddenly I saw a guy leaning over the console between the co-pilot and me. It was an Asian, pith helmet, North Vietnamese uniform, had an AK-47. And I thought, oh, Jesus Christ, we picked up the bad guys. How can we do this? How can this happen? Honest to God, I thought, I'm not going to North Vietnam. I'm not being taken prisoner. I was going to take this right inside of a mountain. And fortunately, Keith Boyd, my co-pilot, realized from my expression, and I'm sure all the blood had drained from my face, that what was going on. I started laughing. Who we picked up were the mercenaries. It's a family of Nung, N-U-N-G, Nungs from China. That's their family business. They're mercenaries. And when we would take them out on mission, I learned later on how this worked. They'd go out in ponchos, and then when they were dropped on the ground, they pulled the ponchos off, and they had on NVA uniforms, and they would try to infiltrate and listen in on conversations, see whatever information they could find until they were found out, and then they had to get out in a hurry. You had to get them out right now. So that was the reason for that prairie fire alarm. Even today, when I hear that kind of alarm, it makes my blood run cold. But that whole mission, the Project Delta mission, I have to say, there were some really bad things that happened, but other than that, that was the most gung-ho part of my experience over there. We were really able to accomplish things that I hadn't seen anywhere else in the 101st or anywhere else that we could do, and I felt like we were kicking ass. So that was the last Project Delta during the whole Vietnam experience. Then we went from there to continuing to support people in that area. We were still living in tents for a period of time, and these were big tents. They weren't primitive, but Hanoi Hannah recognized us one night on her radio show about which tent we were in, which was kind of disturbing too. Anyway, we didn't have any more fatalities. We did have some injuries and a few aircraft shot down from that. I had my first blade strike on my second day there. That just had to chop my way out of in order to be able to take off. I mean, it was not a big tree or anything, but it was on purpose. And I just found that aircraft a few years ago. It's in Philadelphia, which was kind of an emotional reunion. we went from there back. We'll be back in Evans, Camp Evans, which was between Camp Eagle and Way, Fubai, and Quantree. It was the busiest airport in the world, nearly every day, because of all the helicopter takeoffs and landings every day. We would fly resupply missions, big assault missions, small assault missions, other special forces missions, and it was just a routine. And it was every day. Missions would get sometimes really terrifying, and then you'd be bored later on. There's an audio tape or video rather on YouTube with two guys who were on a mission with me. One of whom was a Redskin, and the other was a Lancer as my co-pilot that day on one that started out as just a routine mission and suddenly turned into a nightmare. They were shooting at us with a 75 millimeter recoilless rifle. We were able to get out, but the Redskin aircraft lead his aircraft was so shot up, including his transmission, that he had to sit down on a Firebase O'Reilly, which was not a good place to be either. And we were able to pick him up, and he tore off his patch and gave it to me. He was going home pretty soon. But we're great friends, and we talk frequently. And it took 30-something years to want to look into that, and to start to remember and allow myself to remember about things like that, and renew those friendships. But that's another story. Following, again, our SOG missions were sporadic. We would fly them for a few days, then we'd be back on other missions again. And we were supported Firebase Ripcord, which was another hellish place to be. I don't know how the North Vietnamese transported all the weaponry around that base. It was nestled in the middle of the mountains, deep in the mountains. And this was when the military was planning on withdrawing United States soldiers, ground force soldiers. So they put this base out there to be able to reach with artillery the Ho Chi Minh Trail in Laos, firing across the A Shau. The A Shau is back in the distance here. You can see just a little bit. But the North Vietnamese built up around that. It's the only place I've ever seen this, where the artillery in the last part of that siege had no elevation at all. They were firing at point blank range at the NVA positions. NVA had virtually all of their whole array of weaponry brought to bear, and it's like a hornet's nest. It was unbelievable. Every fifth round was a tracer, and the sky was full of them all the time. They were amazing with mortars. On this map, this photograph of Ripcord, I don't know that you can really tell, but there were 3 pads there, 3 helipads for resupplying. When we were coming in late in this siege, the North Vietnamese had each pad zeroed in with the mortars, incredibly accurate. So when we were coming in, we would tell them, the guys on the ground, don't pop a smoke. I'm coming into for instance, the high pad on the west side that would be on the left of the screen. I'll be there, and once you touch down, you had about 3 to 5 seconds to get stuff off and get out again, because mortars would rain down. So every time you come in, you would vary your approach. We would do a high overhead approach, or do what's called a cyclic climb, where we would fly toward the center of the base itself, toward the lower part. And when you pull back on the cyclic, that's the main stick. It would just make the aircraft shoot up, and then pop down, sit down on that pad, and then get out. It was really scary, and that's the only time this ever happened to me. We also supported the ground troops who were, in different skirmish areas around the base, and still in the jungle. And I was going to be bringing in some ammunition or food or something. I don't remember what. but I called for them to pop a smoke. And when they say pop a smoke, that means they had a smoke grenade, and they were all colored smoke. And so if they popped one with yellow smoke and say, I have yellow, they would confirm it, and I would know that was the right place to go. Well, on this particular mission, I said, okay, pop a smoke. The smoke came up from 3 different locations. So they were listening in again, and 2 of those places had hoped they were going to lure us in. So we had them pop another smoke and re-identified and confirmed where we were getting in there. The last couple of weeks of that, one day I had to do a tear gas mission. I'd never flown a tear gas mission, but tear gas was in big canisters. They were roughly 5 feet long, maybe 10 inches, 12 inches in diameter. And it was like flying in World War I. We had a grease pencil marks in the bubble under my feet. And you learn, it's amazing how quickly you can learn, okay, at this speed, if I drop one out here, this is where it's going to land. And we got pretty good at it. But oh my God, it was like a hornet's nest. And I can't tell you how much tear gas we dropped. And we would see them roll. They had caissons with 51 caliber automatic weapons. They would roll into a cave and then come back out, and they would have like a rag over their face. It was amazing how they could do that. And we lost. A very good friend, my very dear friend, another Lancer, lost his leg, was severed by 51 caliber about a half a mile west of there. That I think it was about 75 to 100 men on the ground who were killed during that siege, and it was, I don't know how those guys did it either. It was amazing what they could do and retain any sanity. I know the John Kelsu was a professional football player who was on the ground there, and what a nice man, always a big smile and always waving thank you. And he came out and was hit. A mortar killed him and another officer too. And also the base commander was killed with a mortar. They were using larger mortar sizes there. And at one point, actually, taking it back a couple of weeks prior to that, the mountain winds were so severe that they were above 60 miles an hour, but it was whipping in every direction. We weren't, by military rules of flight, we were not allowed to fly there. But we didn't have a choice. You got guys on the ground who need stuff. So you'd be flying in, and suddenly you went up 200 feet, and you'd come back flying, just dropping like a rock. Another 150 feet down and twisting. It got so bad that the gunships couldn't fire rockets because you had no control over where they would go. The Navy, we couldn't have any more Navy offshore battleship fire because the wind was so terrible you couldn't control it. So we had gunships for show. They would engage as well as they could once we were under fire, but somehow we made it through that without losing an aircraft. And I don't know how. You'd be worn out. It's like riding a bucking bronco every day. But then that finally, at the end, the U.S. wisely decided to evacuate Ripcord because the air was the only way to get in there. There was no way we could have any ground support to drive, weapons or artillery or anything like that into there, into that base. After that withdrawal, then Firebase Ripcord, O'Reilly, which was about 2 clicks away. If you lift it off from there, you can see O'Reilly, and they went through not anything like Ripcord, but they were under siege for a bit too, and that was a hot spot. Anytime you went in the mountains, you knew it was going to be tough. It was a combat mission. They ran the show pretty much there, but we continued when that mission was over. We continued to run SOG missions, CCN SOG, or milk runs, whatever it is. We call them milk runs if we ever got to in the flatlands and drop off something. One of my last killer team missions into the DMZ took place, I think, maybe January of 71, something like that. Anyway, we picked up the team and headed into the DMZ, and we dropped down low level. And the command and control bird was giving us directions. I turned down a little draw, and man, we got zippered. 38 hits, 51, well, not 51 caliber, but automatic weapons fire. And one guy in the back was hit. We didn't know how bad it was going to be. My co-pilot reported we're losing pressure, and turned. We did make it to, I think, Alpha 4 or Charlie 2, one of those along the DMZ, and Chase Bird picked up the wounded guy and took him on down to the hospital. But it get your attention, and finally, this is not in chronological order. Another mission, a 5-ship mission, once taking South Vietnamese soldiers. We could take 5 American soldiers with gear, or 7 South Vietnamese soldiers in gear. Simply difference in body mass. But this particular day it was Chalk 5, the trail bird, and as we went in with 30-second separation, I could see everybody in front of me. We had to do kind of an inverted S approach because of 251 caliber locations of automatic weapons. And when the first aircraft went, everything we went to was a pinnacle. Always, you take the high ground. So you start them out on the high ground. This tiny pinnacle, it was tall, pretty high up, but a very small area. When the first Lancer aircraft went in, I saw one of those brownish, black, orangish explosions in the bottom of the valley at the very base. Not mortars again. And as each successive aircraft would go in, it was walking. The explosion would be closer to the LZ. So I remember saying to my co-pilot, Pete D'Agostino, I said, "Man, it's gonna be close. It's gonna be tight." So when we turned on final, going in with our crew, with our packs, when we were roughly 25, 30 feet from the LZ, the aircraft lifted up high, and there was an explosion, and then we settled back down. And I took it on into the L zone, landing zone, and the guys wouldn't get off the aircraft. And I was waiting. I couldn't wait any longer because they had it zeroed in now. So I just went ahead and took off. And as soon as I took off, the aircraft lifted again. The tail lifted from the mortar going off. I lost communication during this. So we were flying back. We thought we'd been hit, and a sister aircraft flew up, and this guy was pantomiming and pointing toward the tail of my aircraft. And I was going, "Oh man, I don't know what he sees. I'm afraid to see what it's going to be." But we flew all the way back to Camp Evans, which was like a half-hour flight. And sat down. There's a whole. I can send you a picture, Bud, sometime. But it's called a horizontal stabilizer. It's off the tail, and to either side there were about 3 feet long, about 2.5 feet wide. It's like a fin shape almost. And that mortar round had come through the airspace, which is occupied by 18 inches of rotor blade, 11.5 times a second. It came through that without touching it, and then went through that horizontal elevator, and then exploded. And you could put your hand through that hole. It was big. Had it gone off where it was, it would not have been survivable. And I don't think I was ever the same after that. That was scary. But I'm a little disappointed. Our maintenance people pulled off, put another one on it, so you can go back now. Thanks a lot. We had other missions. I think I mentioned earlier that the North Vietnamese seemed to know where we were going, no matter where we were. They were places they should never have been. I mean, there's no reason they would have had a large force there, and I mean in the middle of nowhere. And in one case, we had, I think there were 12 aircraft going in the Pinnacle near Firebase Fuller, which overlooked Highway QL9, which went from Quantree past Quezon and on over to Laos. But I was the second chalk on that particular flight. And the first flight lead reported a heavy fire. So I went in, and it was indeed very heavy fire. We dropped these guys off. I think we had 12 aircraft in this flight. And I took off backwards to get out of it. And it's like the next 10 aircraft got shot up or shot down. And nobody was killed, but we had gotten maybe 20, 30 guys on the ground. And they were going to be annihilated. There was no question. I thought, I don't know, how do you ever look in the mirror again if you don't try to get them out? So I called a flight lead and said, "Look, I'm gonna go back and I'll get half of them and you get the rest." And he said, "Okay." So I flew back in, and I heard later on that I was the only one of my crew that had eyes open when we landed. It was kind of a creative approach, but 16 guys got on my aircraft, and I said, they didn't speak English, and we couldn't speak Vietnamese, so we couldn't get them off, but we didn't have time to argue the point. So just started hiding. All of them had gotten on my aircraft, all the ones who were able to still move around. And the bad guys were coming out of the jungle around us. So I just kind of hopped it over to the edge of the pinnacle and hopped off the edge. And we kind of cut tree limbs all the way down until we got enough airspeed to become airborne. And because I couldn't come to a hover, we couldn't come to a hover. So we flew all the way back to Quantree and did a running landing, and then burned the skids a little bit, but the aircraft was okay. I don't know. I'm rambling on.
No, sir. This is what we're here to listen to. This is not rambling. This is right up all of the viewers' alley. I mean, this is what we're here to listen to.
Well, I'm very, very, very fortunate, and they're so fortunate to be a Lancer. It's amazing if you've got men that will come to your aid no matter what. Will be there to pick you up, to help get you out, or whatever. It will allow you to do things you never thought you were able to do. And of course, in those situations, you find out what you're capable of, which is not always a really good thing to learn. It's important, but I'm glad I didn't act on it. But anyway, it certainly has affected my whole life. And all the Lancers, I'm served with a lot of real heroes, man. They did incredible stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, but I don't even know how long I've been rambling here. So
it's of no consequence, sir. Then don't even count that as rambling. That was wonderful. And I mean, by all means, if you've got anything else before we even get to questions, you can. If you've got something you'd like to share, the floor is yours. Like I said, sir.
Well, you know what? I'm just been rambling.
Or if you just like to get in some questions, and maybe that'll stir some stuff up that maybe will lead to some other stuff. I do have a question.
Sure.
First off, concerning your co-pilot, you just mentioned, was it
Tim Pasquarelli?
Tim Pasquarelli. And I've got a photo of him I was gonna share here. And who was your? Did you mention earlier that you had another co-pilot? I forgot if you mentioned another name that you had.
Okay, this is Pete DiAgostino, who was the guy in the T-shirt, who looks pretty ripped in that picture. Probably was. They must have had a day off, and that's Harold Wynn on the left. But Pete was my co-pilot when we got hit by that mortar. and I didn't remember that until he passed away a couple of years ago from COVID. But he had sent me a note. It's in his logbook, and it just showed that flight that day, and he just wrote mortar on there. Tim Pasquarelli was a captain. He came in and was a co-pilot until he was made aircraft commander too. Just a really, really good guy, great combat guy. And I think he was in the CAV on the ground in Vietnam in an earlier tour. And by the way, he still carries the names of the guys in his unit when he was in the infantry who were killed. He will never be separated from those. It's very touching when you talk to him. He didn't talk about it much, but he's a really good man, a great pilot and great aircraft commander. This just reminded me of one of Tim. There was a unit. I think some people in the military politics, maybe or whatever, who wanted to be the first to get back in the field after the monsoons. The monsoons were pretty much shut things down. Almost constant rain. It was cool, chilly, very low cloud. Yeah, that's Tim on the right. Yeah, what a good guy. By the way, it's one of the few pictures of him where he's not flipping a bird. But we were one night during the monsoons in our little club, a little shack we called our officers club. And this guy came in like a wraith. I didn't know who he was, had a poncho on. And when he pulled it off, it was a major. So we all snapped to attention, and as you were. And he pulled out a map and sat down at a little table in the back of the bar. That's the bar, yeah. They fixed it up someday. Anyway, he said there was a squad that somebody had put in a few clicks into the mountain during the monsoon on one of the sucker days. And a real nice day sometime. They would think the monsoons are over. He sent these guys out, and then couldn't get it back. And the radio was virtually dead. All you could hear was a click of the mic. So they would turn the radio off and then try to designate a time to turn it back on. So there'd been days. So we all volunteered to go in to try to find these guys. And the weather forecast for the next morning was to have 800 feet of cloud base that we cleared that would allow us to get into the mountains for a certain way. Well, when we got up the next morning, we're there early. We had about a 300-foot ceiling. So we were circling, and Tim was flight lead on that mission. There was no way that we could fly in as a group. So where there was a stream coming out, and Tim hovered up that stream, and we had limited contact with him once he went up in that stream, because he was following and zigzagging as the stream flowed by underneath him, until he was able to use the click on their mic to get a direction about where they were. And he found those guys. He got them all out. One of them was, I think one of them was really sick. Jungle rot was one thing, but this guy was really sick. They'd been without fresh water. They'd been without food for 10 days or something. It was a long time. And Tim got without the rest of us having to go in. And I just thought that was outstanding. I was so proud of him for being able to do that and get them out. But Tim is a really good guy. He's, all of our guys, I have to say, that just really incredible people.
Wow. I mean, that, and you had mentioned he sadly, Pete has passed away, and I was briefly looking at his obituary, and I can't remember if you told me this or not, but it says he survived 2 shoot downs.
Oh yeah, well, there were quite a few Lancers that survived more than one shoot down. And mine was he was very fortunate to do.
Were you with him on one of those shoot downs?
No, I wasn't.
Okay,
I wasn't with him, but actually I'd say most of our guys were in shoot downs.
Wow.
I know Tim during LANCER 719, Tim aircraft, he told me that he was telling me this recently. There was incredible fire they were under, and he had just dropped off more South Vietnamese soldiers, and unfortunately, a mortar hit. They were just outside the aircraft. A mortar hit, killed nearly all of them, but it put over 80 holes in his aircraft. But he was still able to fly it out of there.
Gosh,
It was a terrible thing that all those people died, but it also shielded. It's an awful thing to happen, no matter what. But it happened to shield his aircraft from I'm sure, lethal, deadly.
Absolutely. And one interesting thing before we get into the question, guys, I know y'all have already got some good ones. These are some amazing questions. But the Lancers, let me go ahead and show, since somebody's asking about the aircraft, and that'll be the first one. But to show y'all the how y'all can easily identify a Lancer aircraft, I'll let, when I get the picture up, of course, I will let Mr. Bill explain that. Hang on one second. Here we go. That's the picture I needed. I'll let you explain. They are very noticeable because they have a huge white dot.
Yep.
And I can't remember, sir, and as well as the 101st Screaming Eagle, but was there any significance to the white dot? Was that the logo when you got closer, or was that just a differentiator?
Well, it just differentiated. The 158th had 4 companies, 3 of which were slick companies like the Lancers. And then the one, excuse me, was a gunship company, the Cobra Company. The Redskins had a gold dot. I think the Ghost Riders had a blue dot. And maybe the Phoenix, I may have this backwards, but Phoenix, one of them had a red dot, blue dot, white dot, and a gold dot. But ours was always the round white dot. But do you have that picture of the guys hanging underneath, the SOG team hanging underneath, which is
I've got to see
iconic photo now
let me find it. I've got it. Yes, sir. And I will find it by the time we get it. I don't know where I've put it. I'll find it. But while I'm finding it, let me get to a question while you're.
Yeah, sure.
What kind of aircraft, Cool Hand Luke would like to know, were you flying in Vietnam?
It was a Huey UH-1, an H model, which had a good bit more power than the A models and B models and even C models that were there before us. Had a bigger payload, but because we were in the mountains and the temperature, we could only carry 5 Americans. I understand in the Delta in Vietnam, they were able to carry up to 7 Americans. The cruising speed was 80 knots, but maximum speed was about 120. And there were things that can happen if you exceed that much. So you had to be careful. Not that we didn't push that lever quite a bit of that limit. But a UH-1, that was the picture that Bud just pulled up.
Well, I am absolutely going to have to apologize for this because I'm having the most difficult time finding that Lancer photo. And guys, I will get that up if I can't find it while we're in the stream. But it's an iconic photo. It's one of the iconic photos of and now that y'all know it's the white dot, some of y'all probably pointed out to me if I don't find it during the stream, of a recon team on strings and a Lancer literally just yanking them out of the jungle and them heading back for safer water, so to speak. So I apologize. I'm not able to find that at the moment, but I'm still looking.
Right. None of us know who was piloting the aircraft that day. We all think it might have been us because all of us came back like that. If there were times when guys could climb up the ladder and get into the aircraft, not very often. Usually they have to clip on and hold on to that ladder, and sometimes with wounded guys on there too. And then we had to fly all the way back with them hanging there. And that's what I meant. Those guys had unbelievable bravery and commitment. So this one is returning from Laos or North Vietnam, and another aircraft, I think from a sister company, just happened to snap the photograph. And then about the year 2001, at some reunion, he walked over to a table where Lancers were, and he said, "Hey, I took this great picture of you guys back in 1970." And none of us even knew about it until then, but we don't know who it was. So everybody takes credit. So it might have been me. It might have been. I don't know. We just don't know. But because we all came back that way. If I find it, I'll send it to you now. But
I apologize. I've got all these other photos or the other photos you've sent me, including the blood chit, and I literally cannot find that one photo, and that is making me extremely angry. But I will assure you I will get that up to where, because that is a absolute pivotal Lancer photo. And as a matter of fact, me and Lieutenant Colonel Jacoby have spent 3 months or so trying to beat the bushes to see if just by chance any of the recon men could identify maybe their gear or anybody's gear or setup, and we just have not had any luck as of yet locating any potential teams or anything that could lead to the identification of the pilot or the team. So, but we are still looking nonetheless.
That's been reprinted a lot. You'll see it a lot of places now.
It is, and as a matter of fact, I'm gonna here in just a second, after I get another question going, and while you're speaking, I'm gonna get a Google search for SOG extracts, and I guarantee it'll be one of the first photos that's.
I think it will. I think it will.
Oh, Jason's got a good one, and I was curious about this. He's actually got several good ones, Jason. Good job. Jason Holmes, did you have a special name, or the Lancers have a special name for your SOG missions?
No, we just referred to them as CCN. That was Command and Control North, and we have the patches for that. But they were SOG missions. We knew what they were. None of us talked about it for many years. We signed documents saying we wouldn't for like 20 years or whatever it was. There was nothing but tremendous respect, for the guys doing it, and we were honored to be chosen to be able to be the guys to truck drivers for it. They were scary a lot of times. They'd certainly wake you up.
I just cannot even imagine it, to be honest. We were speaking offline about some of that, and you know what? I think I might have. I did. I just found it.
Okay.
Thank you, goodness. Well, but wait just a second before you quit your search, because I just want to make sure I can get it, and this is in fact the one. Let me save this image and pull this bad boy up, and nope, I gotta go to Reddit right here and make it pull up correctly. SOG extract of a team, save. Sorry, guys. I completely apologize for the nonsense that I've caused today on my photos. I don't usually cause this much mess ups. Okay, here we go. I think this is it. It's going to be a lot worse photo wise, but I think it's clearly a Lancer.
Yeah, that's it.
Yep. And you notice right there, guys, the white circle right there, that is clearly a Lancer. And if I'm not mistaken, unless y'all had some gear, but we've either got one of the crew chief besides the one semi looking out. We've either got a recon man who's climbed up, or either a recon man looking down or trying to climb in. He's already climbed in and looking back down, or he's on the way into the helicopter, it looks like.
Yeah, and if they had an injured guy there, they were going to take care of him, and they wouldn't try to get him up. They would just be there with him. Yeah, they took care of him. And as you can see, the doors are off the aircraft as well. We would take those off totally for CCM-SOG missions
Oh,
to ease egress if we had to get out of the aircraft with pilots or to get us out of the. I'd say you felt very exposed. The doors didn't really give you any protection, but it was
just an extra layer of metal.
I'm sorry.
Just an extra layer of metal would feel pretty good, though.
Well, you could poke a hole in it with an ice pick. I mean, it's not like they were armor plated. The seats had some armor around them, but just slide across it, give you a little cover. But they could get you out of there quickly if you went down and were unable to do it yourself.
I mean, speaking of this, and if you guys notice, it looks like we can actually see one of the guys hooked in here on the ladder down towards the bottom. But I was curious, this is kind of a dual parter since we're on this. Did you, when y'all were tasked, or like you said, you ended up going over and getting the don't talk about this briefing, did you get any immediate training with the SAW guys for extracts or anything? If any contact with them whatsoever for training, or what to do if something went wrong on something like this, or anything like that? Or was your duty strictly fly them in, get them out, and anything in between?
That was pretty much it. We were just the taxi driver, and we have been trained with how to get people out on strings or McGuire rigs, and also with ladders. Just basic flying skills: fly the aircraft, hold it still, and wait. Your crew chief and door gunner talk you down as you're hovering down these deep holes in the jungle some of the time. It's amazing. I had a tape of one of my missions that was supposed to be just a nothing sort of resupply mission, and this was not far from Ripcord, O'Reilly. I think I mentioned it earlier, but what I find remarkable is listening to the crew chief and door gunner, because they're essentially telling you how to get down. It's okay, sir. Turn the tail like 5 inches left or whatever. Now you come down. Okay, you move forward just a little bit. There's a limb. You need to get around, or vice versa. Till you get all the way down to the bottom, and then to hear how that works, it's really a coordinated effort. I remember the one of those I mentioned earlier. As soon as we got down, the guy I saw trees exploding, and the commander on the ground was yelling, "Get out, get out, get out!" It was that 75 millimeter recoilless rifle, and so we had to come back up, zigzagging on back up as quick as we could, and get out of there. And then we had 51 caliber waiting for us too. But by the way, it looked like giant orange softballs flying by you when they were coming by. When you see those tracers. But the aircraft was one unit. It was really a tight-knit unit. You had complete trust in the crew chief and door gunner and co-pilot, and vice versa. That's how we had to work. You couldn't have, nobody could slack. You had to be there to do your job.
And oh man, that is as they say, the pucker factor. I can only imagine you guys flying in and getting and extracting, inserting and extracting. Both of them at this point in time were tough. Wow. And actually, now that you're speaking about it, I've shared it. There is guys, there is audio I've shared in the comment section, the live comment section, of Mr. Bill in Vietnam. And it is, I'll read the description for you so you can find it if you're interested. It is Bill Walker flying a Huey near O'Reilly in Vietnam. Audio picks up Steve Smith, Redskin 16, whose Cobra gunship is taking 51 caliber, and the transmission blowing a hole in it the size of softballs. So, and it's about an hour-long transmission, and I have shared that in the chat. And I recommend, if y'all want to hear some pretty hair-raising stuff, jump on that and see what the guys were experiencing. Jason's got another good one. I've heard a lot of stories about pilots being lost in the clouds, maybe trying to get through a hole in the clouds. Did you have any experience like that with heavy cloud cover?
Yeah, and honestly, we tried to avoid clouds as much as we could. The instruments we had by today's standards were very rudimentary, and there's so many moving parts in an aircraft, you could get vertigo very easily. Now, we would use clouds sometime to get, if we knew it's not a thick layer, to climb through to get above some of the small arm fire that they couldn't see you. But if it was a very thick cloud cover, you were really taking your life in your hands. So we would try not to do that, especially at night. It got very scary at night. And a sucker hole, we referred to it on a day, a cloudy day, and suddenly you can see a patch of blue. If you tried to fly up through to get to that patch of blue, you were really taking your life in your hands. We had instrument training, but boy, I'll tell you, it's a scary feeling when you can't tell whether you're up or down or falling out of the aircraft or what. It's just a bizarre feeling. So most of us tried to avoid that if there was any way possible. And sometimes you didn't have a choice. That's what you had to do, but really had to concentrate. I would not something I would recommend unless you had a modern day ability instruments to help you with that.
Wow, that's. I mean, the Vietnam. I mean, there is nothing more quintessential Vietnam. I mean, than a Huey chopper pilot just flying. Excuse my language, balls of the wall. I love seeing the footage, and I've started finding some and trying to share it. And Lieutenant Colonel Jacoby, who I'm trying to get on, who is a fellow Lancer, guys, has a great SOG page with a lot of Lancer footage I'll be sharing, so y'all can see some of the guys. Jason, again, wow. Did you ever have teams blow claymores as they were extracting? What was it like hovering with all the chaos going on around you?
Oh, yeah, they did blow claymores a lot of times when leaving, especially the SOG teams would. We took especially Redskins. All of them had really good pilots. I would say the Army did a tremendous job of training and selecting people to be pilots. And our only job was to take care of the guys on the ground. There was no other job. To resupply, to try to pick them up when things were bad, and they got to get them in, get them to hospitals when needed, or whatever. But there's a lot of hot extractions where everybody in the whole aircraft is firing. They've set off claymores. They've done whatever they can to get out, and you try to get them out as quick as you can. And one case, twice has happened. Some Cobra gunfire. We took some shrapnel in our blades from the close cover they were given. They were such close. That's how we were able to get out. They were firing at the enemy that close to us and firing rockets, and no complaint about the shrapnel. Nobody got hurt. Part was replaceable. In fact, if it was our rotor blades, we would use those as a bench, and if we had a movie camera or anything to watch. We all got damaged from time to time. All of us took hits numerous times. Sometimes really bad. But yeah, that was, again, nothing but tremendous respect for those guys on the ground to come out of that. And see, a couple of times you see some kind of teary-eyed people, and I think they got out of something they didn't realize they didn't think they could. And speaking for me, and I think most of us, you just couldn't think about it. You just had to fly the aircraft, cope with this later, deal with it later, which takes many years, actually. It was a long time before I could, was willing to deal with it. But things were good. Mostly because one of our crew chiefs set up a website for us, the Lancer site, the lancers.org, if anybody ever wants it, is the main site. But we're on an email site together that has just really, really been cathartic and really helpful for all of us.
it is a wonderful email chain. I've been lucky enough to be allowed in that, and it is great seeing. I mean, y'all have a brotherhood. I was gonna say a bond, but y'all, it's really a brotherhood. I mean, you guys are like family, and it comes through very clear. It's amazing, and I actually have shared the Lancer homepage in the chat, and we'll be linking it into our show page because, like he said, guys, it's a wonderful, wonderful website, and it also actually for future tidbit, there were some modern day Lancers as well. So they've actually got some photos of the Vietnam veteran Lancers and the modern day Lancers, so to speak, meeting up and hanging out. So very interesting.
We're very proud of the modern day Lancers too. They're carry our tradition. We see them. I didn't get to go this year, but we've been with them frequently, and I'm very proud that one of them took my number, Lancer 17, and that's what I was so flattered by. But they're really a wonderful group of people. They're just the same way as we were, dedicated and professional.
Absolutely. 101st is they're known for being professionals. That they are. Daniel, nice to see you today, Daniel. How many flight hours did you get up to in Vietnam?
Actually, 1,270 in Vietnam. We were by Army regulations. We were not supposed to be to have more than 60 hours a month or 720 hours a year. But you have to do what you have to do. To take care of people. You can't say I'm not going to go fly. Screw these guys. You're just going to do it. So I never dreamed I'd get that many hours during my tour. Nearly all of those were combat hours, simply because we're in the mountains most of the time. I think almost 1,000 of those were actual combat hours. I think, not positive, but I think it's something like 800 or 900 sorties altogether, which are separate flights into something. But all of us, just not just the Lancers, a lot of companies did that, I'm sure. I can't really speak for others, but you do what you have to do to take care, as much as you can, to take care of them. I'd hate to wake up and think I didn't do something that would have helped out,
Absolutely. We get asked this, and this is a very good question. I'll be anxious to hear your answer for it, since you were up north, closer to North Vietnam. Mr. Terry is a CCC Hatchet Force veteran. He's a SOG veteran, and he is wondering, any experiences with MiGs or Russian helicopters in your AO?
There was in our AO, but not when I was there. Now we would be flying in our area, and you get to hear over guard, which when it came over like a broadcast to everyone, that there are bogies headed south from Hanoi, and that gives you a chill. We're the helicopter is not going to go nearly as fast as a jet will, or even a fixed wing, some fixed wing aircraft. But I never saw one. At Firebase Hickory, which was a listening station way over in the northwest corner of South Vietnam, and it was nearly always socked in. It was like an overgrown butte, if you will. It was, as I recall, that doesn't look like it to me, but it might be. Maybe my memory's bad on it, but it was. I remember having to resupply there a couple of times. I think, boy, these guys are not going to be around very long, because it was so far removed, and nearly always socked in with weather, very steep sides, jungle covered sides, and then I don't know if there were 40 or 50 guys on that base. It was so far over there, and sure enough, they got overrun, and I don't know if anyone survived that. But also, I believe that's where a North Vietnamese aircraft was shot up, I don't know if it shot it down or shot it up. It was, I think, a Cobra, encountered it and shot it up. They were trying to fly in that and drop bombs on that base, that listing point.
We actually have a man we're hoping to have on here maybe this month, hopefully, if his health permits. Was at CCN and remembers the Lancers and told me today to thank you for your service. I don't know if he was there when you were serving, but nonetheless, he wanted me to thank you as a Lancer. He was on Hickory when.
Whoa.
When the overrunning was getting ready to happen, he was getting on the aircraft that John Caviani was getting off of to take over. And he turned around and said, "John, it's about to get bad." And they left. And about 3 hours later, it began. And John was the only, as far as I know, maybe Mr. Terry can help us. As far as I know, John Caviani, SOGman, he was the only one that survived. He was captured and sent to North Vietnam as a prisoner.
Oh my gosh! Oh, please thank him.
He sadly he earned the Medal of Honor, but he passed away several years ago. Sadly,
okay. Oh, wow.
But there has been many discussions in our little SOG group, and if you're on Facebook, I need to get you into it. Because there's probably a lot of men you can connect with, but they strictly remember the Lancers, and some of the guys that were on controlling the air back at base could hear some of the Lancers being told to get out of there due to it being overrun and the issues, and several Lancers, for lack of a better term, telling base to shove it, and kept working the area over until they were Winchester and all of that, because they knew what was coming. So that's why most of the guys tell me anytime I speak to you guys to give you all your thanks, because they know a lot of y'all were breaking rules that day to do what y'all could do.
Well, I appreciate that. We all try to take care of each other,
Absolutely.
All you can do.
Yep. Y'all are lifesavers. I mean, quite literally.
Well, there was no big picture. You just want to take care of each other. Do your best to take care of each other.
Absolutely. Oh, this is a good, interesting question. Daniel, what do you think of the Huey as an aircraft? What are your pros and cons for it?
Well, I absolutely love that aircraft. It was so forgiving. Man would come in and just shot to hell. And just keep on going. There are times when, you would try to pick it up with your hands as you're sitting there waiting, trying to get everybody on or off under tremendous fire, and it would take so many hits and just keep running. It was a really a good aircraft, and I maybe because it always brought me home, but I have nothing but good things to say about the Huey. Maybe some other people feel other ways, but that baby brought me home nearly every time.
Absolutely, that's can't have any fault in it when it brings you home safe and sound.
That's right.
That's very true. I wonder if this was. Oh, okay. I've missed a few. Hang on. I'm sorry, guys. I've got kind of mixed up on the questions here. One gentleman said, "My grandpa told me a Russian MiG buzzed his carrier in Vietnam. Did you ever hear of this sort of thing happening?"
I heard of that. I don't think that was near where we were, but I heard of that happening. I think it was further up north, probably closer to Haiphong.
Out in the Gulf.
Yeah, but I'd heard of it. Thank God I never saw it.
There's some really good questions, guys. I'm getting to them. I kind of messed around on some of them. Jason, the NVA had a lot of different kinds of AA. What was, in your opinion, the worst to see?
Well, if it had radar on it, and while you're flying that area, if you would hear this click, you need to change your altitude immediately. Geez, I'm trying to think of the. Is it not 23 millimeter?
37 and 51,
27, 51 were bad enough. I mean, they probably shot down more aircraft than anything else. But 37 millimeter. Yeah, those were explosive rounds too. And I only took fire from those once, and fortunately, 1 or 2 rounds went by me, and thank God I missed. That's when I did use a clout to get out of the way. Just get back out of the case. In Caisson, the southern end of Caisson runs right into the Ashaw Valley. So it was just a bad neighborhood. Fortunate they didn't shoot at me that much. It wouldn't have had a chance really. That was way too much. 51 caliber would get your attention. You cut a lot of buttonholes. They were in there too.
Flying basketballs coming at you.
Well, yeah, you only see every 5th round. So
yeah,
4 of them you can't see. But man, they looked awfully big coming by.
Tying into that, did you ever? Well, you did mention radar. Did you get any SAMs or any missiles?
Hit? No, I didn't. I didn't. Thank God. That was more in toward Hanoi where you would see that. Where they had surface or air ground surface air missiles. That took a big toll on our fast movers, but I thank God I never had to deal with any of that.
Absolutely, thank goodness. Wow, I was hoping this question would come up, especially for a helicopter pilot. Was there usually music playing in your helicopter? What were you listening to when you did listen to music?
Well, we had actually, we sometimes we'd have 6 radios on. We'd listen to all of them at once. So during a mission, that's all I listened to were those. At the end of the day, if we were coming home, and in particular, if you'd survived everything, we'd have on the Air Armed Forces
Radio Vietnam.
Yeah, and you rock music. It was just a great escape for a little while. You didn't have to think about anything. You bang your head on the side or whatever.
Did y'all have a favorite tune that came on that really y'all kind of maybe adopted as y'all's song, or that y'all really looked forward to coming on?
Well, I think nearly everybody's saying we got to get out of this place.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
War, what is it good for?
Yeah, absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
Oh no, that was talking about somebody seeing some aircraft. Good question here. Jason says, I'd like to know what you think of the Huey versus the Cobra.
Well, they work, in concert. I've got to fly in a Cobra. Actually, I wanted to be a gunship pilot, but I didn't want to give them another 4 years of my life just to get that, because you have to get that transition. You had to agree to stay another 4 years. And I went through gunnery school and flight training and did very well in it, but I just wasn't willing to do that. So I did get to fly with Redskin 1-6, a friend of mine, the guy who got shot down that day, giving me cover. And it was a lot different. It was 36 inches wide, as the beam. They could go, I think they get 145 miles per hour or 145 knots, something like that. Boy, I love the machine, the miniguns and mini Vulcan cannon. And I remember, I'm from a rural area. I remember being a kid and throwing sticks or rocks up a bridge. And I got to shoot the thumper, the 40 millimeter thumper out of the front of that once. That was a lot of fun too. And plus you fly with your wrist practically. It's a great aircraft. Hot, but they did have air conditioning, but it's amazing. I was not there for this, but the Redskins told me about this, and I talked to this guy once, but this was before I got there. In 1969, they were in the Ashaw Valley, and a mission turned to hell, and it ran late, and it was getting dark. And the Cobra may have been worse than a Huey as far as flying with instruments. I'm not sure. But there were two Cobra companies still there as night fell, and they were trying to get out, and they got these guys out on slicks. One of the Cobras made it out. One of the Redskins made it out. The other didn't. And they when this pilot came to, his back was broken. The aircraft was inverted. His front seat, his co-pilot, was dead and was hanging from the seat, tied him by the seatbelt. And this guy, I can't think of his name right now, but he got out of the aircraft and out of the tree. And for the next, I think it's 6 or 7 days, he was alone in the Ashau Valley, in the jungle. And he may have been in Laos at that point, because it abutted Laos. And he was out there with, I guess he had an M16 in his sidearm, but that's all he had. The survival gear didn't have that much. It did include a mirror. We all were given a mirror in our survival vest that had a hole in the middle of it. And the idea is, if you're trying to signal an aircraft, you put the mirror up to your eye, and the mirrored side would be facing whoever you're looking at, and to try to reflect light from the sun so they would see it. And as it turned out, and an aircraft did see this, and they flew low enough to see it was American, dirty as hell, thin as a rail, and they picked him up and brought him back to Camp Evans. As it turned out, the day they got him back and set him down at Camp Evans, he could walk, but even though his back had fractures in it, he walked in on the memorial service for himself, which just was, I can't imagine the shock, or the emotions to think you've lost a good friend there, and suddenly you see him come walking in. And I've heard those who saw him that day talk about it. But a tremendous story. He was not willing to talk about it when I've been in contact with him before, which I can understand. Some people never will, and some people will. But what a story of survival, and thankfully it was a miracle that he was found.
Absolutely. I mean, that some things, are luck and all that, but stuff like that, you've got to think there's divine intervention, whatever you'd like to say is at work, but stuff like that, is only happening for a reason. This is more of a question or a comment. When the Hueys from Cool Hand Luke, when the Hueys and Cobras gained newer twin turbines, I hear it was night and day difference. Or wait, he said, sorry, from the 1500 HPs to the 1800 HP singles.
Oh, yeah, it was huge. That the hotel H models had the more power. It was amazing difference, and the lifting power. The speed was pretty much the same, because there are things that go on with flight and a rotating wing that you are separate from the power. That problems can develop if you go too fast. There are issues that can happen. But that aircraft, it would always pick you up. I remember flying some the older aircraft, especially with high heat, high humidity, makes it very difficult to lift. And a couple times I couldn't lift out of the aircraft lift the aircraft up rather, until I slowly let it rotate a little bit to ease off torque. So just to kind of get enough lift just to get out of it. Unfortunately, I wasn't getting shot at the time I used it. But, it was always a concern. Density altitude, it's what that's referred to.
Wow. I've heard horror stories, and especially if I'm not mistaken, other than the of course the RPG that took them down, but in Somalia, I heard that a lot of the issue was, and even in Iraq or Afghanistan, the mountains and the heat pockets and all that, they're not able to get lift, and they'll just out of the sky. Right.
Yeah, it's pretty scary.
I can't imagine. Just terrible. Gosh. Great question, Jason. Did you? Oh, I already went that one. Sorry, I had it highlighted. Could you describe what it's like in a crowded airspace, like in a prairie fire emergency, or how important it is to have a good FAC to control the show and action going on?
Well, really, we didn't. Where we flew, we were nearly all single file. So it really wasn't crowded airspace for the most part. And like in the withdrawal from Ripcord and part of Limestone 719, there were crowded airspace. You had to watch everything, every direction. I had one very close encounter with a Phantom jet that at Ripcord. I thought I'd come in higher to try to avoid some of that small arms fire and automatic weapon fire. And suddenly an F4 Phantom jet appeared right in front of me. I could see his face. He could see mine. I'm sure we both were, blown into a paper bag at that point. But I forget the second part of the question.
And he was saying, when action's going on, how important is it to have a good FAC forward air controller on scene?
Actually, I only worked with a forward air controller a couple of times, the one I described earlier. But there were some missions where we had one, and it was great because they could coordinate. They could fly above the fray, and they could see what was going on and help us pretty much individually, even to mark spots. They could fire a rocket that would identify where the target was, or near where people were to be picked up or whatever. So it was outstanding when we got to work with them.
Wow, amazing. There are a few more good questions, and I've got some while some people are getting some together. I know this one would come up. Jason wants to know, did you ever get to have any drinks or hang out with the SOG guys after getting them out of trouble?
I didn't really get to hang out, but I did have and I wouldn't say any, I'd say a lot of drinks when we did that. Especially if everything had turned out okay that day. Yeah, they could hold their liquor. We did okay too.
I was about to say, I'm sure y'all stepped up to the plate and held y'all's on as well.
Yeah. My closest call was trying to stand on my head and drink a beer once, and it's a challenge. I thought I was going to drown.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That sounds like that was a rowdy night, though.
Yeah.
Were you given
got the briefings always?
Always.
Yeah, because you got to have knowledge is power. You're getting to know as much as you can. You need to know where the where certain armor, automatic weapons are, 51 caliber, or whatever they know. Tell me everything you know, and I'll find a way to get in and out. So yeah, and we were cautioned that this is top secret. We had to sign the documents. That it would be top secret, and would not talk about it. And we abided by that.
I mean, what was what was that feeling like? I mean, were you I mean, I know surely you weren't expecting it, but I mean, were you like having any second thoughts, like, wow, this is pretty heavy duty, or were you just doing your part, sign it, and go on and rock and roll?
Well, we were going to sign it anyway, but the first one that I mentioned where we got that pilot out, that was pretty different because they took off nearly all of our American insignia, and they told us, we're not coming after you if you don't get out of here, if you don't get back. So we knew we were on our own. So it was, give it a little chilly spot in the pit of your stomach. But then you put your head down. You got to do what you got to do, and hope nothing happens. I hope you get back okay. And fortunately, that time it did. It worked well.
That's the real deal right there. Wow.
Yeah.
Man. Wow. I'm gonna pull up a photo of, and maybe this map can show whereabouts you are, because I've had some people message me that are watching that don't have accounts that can't message on the live chat, but got a map of Vietnam here. You were up north here near Da Nang, or were you closer to Phu Bai up here?
We were north of Hue. If you see,
wow,
we're between Quan Tri and Hue.
Okay, so yeah, you were right in the middle of it then. Yeah. Wow.
Now, if you look to the left, you see Khe Sanh. To your left, that's west, and that's the Khe Sanh Plains right down there, and then that led right into the to the Ashaw Valley, which is right on the border. It was Ashaw Valley is in Vietnam, but it was on that western side.
Wow.
And
I mean, you guys are right there. I mean, at the border, pretty much. I mean, that's a hop, skip, and a jump.
Right. They had the North Vietnamese had a big fort across on the north side of the DMZ, and I remember the special forces guys saying they could hear music playing there at night. But I don't know, it was such a weird relationship between the governments that I don't know why we never didn't go and just bomb the hell out of that place. But I know that's where most of the guys, the North Vietnamese who were infiltrating through the DMZ were. But I don't know. I never understood that.
That one comes up literally every podcast we have. We always ask a similar question to that. You know, how could we have won the war and stuff like that? And absolutely, the bombing halt. I'll never understand that. Let's see. Oh, that's a good one. And then I'll get to some other. What did you do when you returned home from Vietnam?
Well, it was a hard time. When I left Vietnam on February 19th, 1971, first of all, I couldn't believe I'd made it. Most of the guys I flew with got Purple Hearts. I mean, I didn't. It's not a complaint. I didn't want one. Many of them had them, but I just, especially after that mortar went through, I couldn't compute the odds of that happening. So I didn't know that I had it, but I had a boatload of PTSD when we lifted off from Cameron Bay to come home. It was the loudest cheer I'd ever heard. There was like 120 guys on this plane until we touched down and so we came into Portland, I think it was. And man, it was deafening. Just incredible. We made it back. We were home. I had to transfer to a flight down to Los Angeles. And coming off the plane, I saw a group of people, some kind of shabby looking, but man, they started saying things to me and us, and names they called us. And I thought, Jesus, this is what my country thinks of me. And that was like the low point of my life. It was awful. And, there was what had happened during that year, during 1970. Kent State had happened. They learned things about Lieutenant Calley and what had happened there. And I understand people protesting war, but they started demonizing those of us who were there. And that was hard to deal with. I ended up, the job market was terrible. Excuse me. It took me like 8 months, 7 months to really find a decent job. And it was a hard year. It was the hardest year of my life, a lot harder than the year I was in Vietnam. So things worked out well, and ended up having a 50-year career in selling specialty metals. I'm based in Reading, Pennsylvania, and I met my wife there, our future wife. We've been married now 49 years. Great
Congratulations.
Family. And she brought me home, and she really did it for me. It took a long time, though. It was 30 years before I could talk about it.
Wow. Congratulations on your marriage. I'm always happy to hear of Vietnam vets coming home and marrying their sweethearts and still being happily married after all these years. A good woman. All the Gold Star mothers, all the Gold Star wives, veterans' wives and mothers. They're just a solid group of people.
Yeah, absolutely.
My utmost respect to all families of veterans. I lost my father, who was a Marine Corps veteran, and
I'm sorry.
It's thank you. It's Agent Orange really wreaked havoc on him. He
Oh
was up
God,
there
yeah.
around 68, 69 near Da Nang, and it really wreaked havoc on him. But
Oh man, I'm sorry.
yes, sir.
Agent Orange
But
still haunts us
it,
all. So many of
it
us are dealing with it, and I'm knock on wood, I'm not. But we were still flying those missions when I was there, and I can
it
still smell it. I remember smelling. Um, in my opinion, those who have died from Agent Orange should have their names on the wall.
I fully agree. It's a real shame, and a lot of those guys, like you said, I mean, would come across it in the jungle, not knowing what it is, and just get completely drenched with it, and just, I mean, it's just, But that's a story for a whole different show.
Yeah.
This is interesting, and I have actually got a picture showing it, and I'm curious about it as well. Daniel would like to know: is there any reason for the red tail wings on y'all's on y'all's aircraft? Meaning, let me pull up this photo.
Well, I think you're talking about that horizontal elevator was called.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
that's what the mortar went through in mine, by the way. But
Oh,
that helped stability at speed. They would the faster you would go would be a little more nose down. Pardon me, attitude, and it was coordinated through the controls that it would adjust that angle to help keep that aircraft level. By the way, that's going into the round table where all our hooches were over to the right. Obviously you can see the hangars there. And there was a canine compound just below the hill. Dogs always, we loved the dogs, but boy, when they got on board, they loved to stand up and on the console, put their front paws up. And I thought, man, this thing could bite my finger off right now. I love dogs, but I remember that during a mortar barrage one night, a lot of it was directed toward that canine compound, and I think they did that on purpose. And the dogs were terrified. They were howling, and it was awful. I want to tell you one story on war story here.
absolutely.
We were out near Ripcord again, and I got a call to had broken in and asked for an extraction, wounded. It was a deep hover down. The trees were probably 120, 150 feet tall, triple canopy. And so we lowered a basket down through the treetops, just at a hover above it. Unfortunately, I wasn't taking any fire. I mean, periodically somebody just shoot at you. But when we got all the way down there and we pulled it back up, we had it hoist, pulled it back, and there was a dog on the stretcher strapped in and bloody. And so we lowered it back down, and this guy came up next. He was crying. He said, "I knew if I came up first, you wouldn't wait for the dog." I said, "No, waiting for the dog." The dog were tremendous. So we brought 3 guys up, but the most seriously wounded was the dog, and well, they had a tremendous closeness with those dogs.
Wow. What kind of dogs were there at y'all's compound? German Shepherds or
German Shepherds.
German Shepherds?
That's the only kind I remember. There may have been others, but that's the only ones I remember. But boy,
Wow.
they had a special relationship with their handlers and with the units
Oh,
they
yeah.
served with.
I've had the great honor to speak to a Force Recon dog handler and a few men on the team, and they were, they loved the dog, and the dog was kind. But when they were in the bush, kind of like them, that he flipped the switch, and they always worried that if the handler got hit or wounded and wasn't able to handle the dog, they were afraid of, they wouldn't be able to control him, or, he'd go on a bloodlust or what have you. So yeah, those dog handlers, they had a close bond. I mean, much like you see today with the modern war dogs. I mean, it really got serious in Vietnam. Of course, they've always had war dogs, but Vietnam was really where you saw it kicking off. Wow, we've got a Vietnam. One of my friends, Mr. Red Wimet, he was with the 1st Battalion, 9th Marines, The Walking Dead, and he was commenting on your map in the background. He said that's a great map you've got.
Yeah, thank you. That's actually, that has this has all the aircraft, helicopter companies that the 101st had during our year there.
Okay, I thought I noticed the different aircraft in some of the patches. I was wondering what that was. That's nice.
You can't see it. But I'll try to send a picture or something. But the top, the second from the top over my left shoulder is a Lancer aircraft, and I guess my right shoulder there. But it's the Lancer aircraft is the second one. Wrong side.
Yep. Second from the bottom, right, or top, I mean, right there.
Yeah, right. Yeah. The Redskin is the fourth one down. The C Company, which is the the Phoenix, they're the ones with the blue dot, and then on top the Ghost Riders with the red dot.
Okay. We were just a bit off. We had our colors just one craft off. From earlier. That was good. Yeah. Wow. That is a great. Just curious, where do the Lancers sell that, or is that a special poster that y'all got for serving?
Just let me put this over here. It's a Lancer.
Oh, that's a beautiful patch. But oh wow, that's amazing.
It's a guy made these and took one of the Lancer patches and did that for Lancer 35, and it's a really nice picture. He does it for a lot of these companies. But this came from God, I can't think of the guy's name that did it. They were numbered posters, and it has all the aircraft that flew in the 101st. It picked the rotary wing anyway, including the one which was the flying crane. And we had a guy that was in our company for a short period of time before he had an opening to go to the flying crane opening they had. He'd been trained in that. So he got transferred to that, and he came back to the round table, which was our where we kept all our aircraft, and landed that thing on the round table, and it's the cleanest it's ever been. It blew everything off of there. It's amazing.
Wow. Did you ever get to see the crane in action, getting to work?
Oh yeah.
You did?
A lot. They were carrying aircraft and
wow,
and downed aircraft. Chinooks could do that too, but I saw them work. But they carried big loads most of the time. They generally were not in a combat area. They didn't have any weaponry, as far as I know.
Okay. And I forgot to follow up on the last question, but Daniel was wondering again, was there a particular reason that y'all stabilizers were red, or did y'all just?
I think most of the aircraft stabilizers were red because they were red on top. It was easy to see, so if you went down and you got a green aircraft in a jungle, that portion was red, so you could see it better.
Wow. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. I'll have to start looking, and I've never really noticed that. I mean, I noticed it on y'all's, but I don't know if I've noticed it on the others. Maybe they just had the top, or y'all had the whole. I don't know. I have to look, but I'm glad Daniel brought that up. That's a really good question, Daniel. Thank you for that. And I had I know what I was going to ask. Excuse me. Look in my throat. Excuse me, guys. I was curious, and I'm surprised it hasn't come up in a question yet. What was your personal loadout that you would you only carry a sidearm? Did you guys have a Car 15 in the cockpit, or what was y'all's?
We each had a sidearm, which just made you feel better than being an effective weapon. A 38 special, and an M16 would carry the strap, hanging on my seat. At one point, I carried a shotgun for one period of time, but a 12 gauge pump. I only did it for a couple of weeks. It was just not wieldy, but I thought in elephant grass it might be effective. I can't think of the guy's name on the left, Farmer maybe, and the guy on the right is Gary Whitty, who got a Silver Star during LAMCER 719. Really good man, and both of these guys are.
Absolutely. I'm trying to see about getting Mr. Gary to share, and I've got some of the other Lancers that are uh, trying to see about coming on as well. Red, yes, sir. Noticing Mr. Bills and all of the Sogman's photos, all of y'all were kids. I
Yeah,
mean,
we were. Yeah, we were.
it's it,
Uh, uh, and so proud. I'm very proud of my service. I hope my kids never have to go through anything like that. But we were just kids, and I guess wars are fought by kids.
sadly they're started by men and fought by kids.
Yeah, yeah. They're
There's
sporting my mustache there.
Oh yeah, that's a good one, sir. That's a good. Did they have any regulations for you guys on facial hair?
Oh, it could not extend past the corners of your mouth.
Ooh, rule
Although,
breaking right here.
right, a guy I knew I was in flight school with. Flew in the Kingsman, I think, in the 101st. Anyway, he came out one morning and his had just started to turn down on the side of his lip. The warrant officers are kind of notoriously not tremendously military at times of the time. Anyway, this major just locked him up, and he said, "That's twice the size of any mustache in the Army Alliance. That better be gone by tomorrow." So he said, "Yes, sir. I'll meet everybody halfway." Came back the next morning and shaved off one side. It looked like he had fallen asleep and it just slid over to the side of his face. But anyway, the major said effing warrants and walked away.
I love that. I've seen some of the air cap guys with you know the Robin Old
Oh yeah, the
wax
handlebars.
tips,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
did any of your guys ever sport the wax tips or anything or handlebars?
No, they were pretty. 101st was pretty much sticklers about some of that.
Yeah, I can imagine. So they're not
Yeah.
going to let some wild men walking around the compound and all
Right,
that.
right.
Nice stash. I didn't even shave until I was 20, and even then, heck, I'm 32, and I'm just now starting to get to where I can grow a beard. So, what's that say about me?
Yeah.
uh, let's see. Waiting on some questions to come in. Wow, I didn't realize that we're coming up on 2 hours here.
Yeah, yeah.
I've we're about to let you go. I've got one more or two more questions. Let me see. I had it written down here. Hold 1 second.
Sure.
How did you get? It looks like I've misplaced it, but I think I remember. No, you did speak about your first SOG mission. By
Yeah.
chance, do you remember who your first? No, I remember what it was because someone asked a question and I was going to get you to see if you could elaborate, but actually it was about Ripcord. So we're going to have to hold that because you've got a lot of info on Ripcord and LAMSUM 719. So,
Okay.
um, I don't want to hold you any longer because, well, like I said, we're coming up on 2 hours. Would you like to stick a pin in this and maybe come back and speak to us for LAMSUM 719 and
Sure.
a little
Sure.
more on Ripcord? Because
Yeah,
again, I don't want to hold you any longer
that's
than
right.
we've had you.
I was only on lamps on 719 for the initial day and the next day. And that's the only time. And I honestly, I said, I have to stop. I felt like it was at the point of not if, but when. And I'm pushing the envelope too much. It's, 1,500 I'm sorry, 1,270 hours, most, that combat. And I just needed it. I needed to stop. I was going to go see my parents, seen them in a long time, So, fortunately, they actually, Mike Jacoby and agreed,
Wow.
and let that happen. But, and I have a feeling he's one who got me to be flight lead on it that day. It surprised me, but, whatever.
And I mean, and guys, he's talking, and we'll get into it. But just to let you know, he was 10 days away from going home, and got roped into being the lead aircraft for the initial day of the Lamson 719 operation. So you can imagine what he was feeling with 10 days until he's going back to the world and getting into this. If that's all right with you, I don't want to hold you any longer, and I would love to have you back to where you could actually get into some more detail and share a little bit more, if that would be all right with you.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you. I'm flattered, and thank you for doing this. I'm speaking for an awful lot of guys that are still carrying a lot of weight from a long time ago. And yeah, thank you.
Is there anything else you'd like to say? Terry says, yeah, 2 hours is the bladder limit for us old guys.
I'm right there with beer now. Yeah.
Yeah, everybody would love to have you back. They said, is there anything else you'd like to say before we wrap it up today, though?
I can't think of it. I just appreciate it. I think it's healthy. It took me so long to talk about it, period, and now I'm able to do that and not stay up all night. Then, so it's very healthy. Thank you very much, and I certainly appreciate you guys' interest and great questions.
We thank you.
If it's something I don't know, I'll just make up an answer. So.
Well, it's perfectly fine, and everybody's saying thank you, and we're wanting to have you back. And yes, Red, 10 days is way too short to be pulled into something like that. So yes, guys, we're definitely gonna have Mr. Bill back. Yeah, we're right at the 2 hour mark, and this has been a great show. Guys, thank you. Like Mr. Bill said, it's been wonderful. And I'll stay in touch with Bill to see when we can get him back on. But if you don't have anything else, Mr. Bill, we're going to wrap it up and call it a day.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate this.
Thank you. And I'll be in touch later on.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye. Let's see here. Leave studio. All right.
Okay.
Yep, and I'm going to close up. All right, guys, we've had a wonderful guest. Yep, you can hit leave studio, Mr. Bill, and it'll take you right out. Yep. Great show. Wonderful. I hate, Jason, I saw you had the Ripcord question, and we were speaking a little bit before that, and there was so much stuff that besides what he mentioned, between men that he knew that were flying in along with him, that he spoke to them afterwards and got stories. So so he won't be rushing through it, we're gonna get him back to talk about that first day of LAMCER, and then talk about Ripcord, because he's got a wealth of information on that. But guys, we've got a huge show tomorrow. Cliff Newman will be here. I'm going to be getting in touch with him. So that tomorrow is going to be huge. We have got, we've had someone from the final Halo, and we're going to have somebody from the first Halo. And by the way, that's my Eldon Bargewell Memorial. If you can see that, Eldon Bargewell Memorial. So we've got an important show. Cliff was actually there, so we'll get to hear a little bit about the ceremony from him. But wonderful. I will be in touch with you guys through Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get y'all ready for tomorrow. But y'all get y'all's questions ready, because it's set in stone. We're good to go. It's we even ran a check yesterday just to make sure. So get your Cliff Newman questions ready, and we'll be ready for it. Yep, this is a ceremonial. Major General Eldon Bargewell, who was in SOG and Delta Force Red. He was the leader of Delta Force after serving in Delta. He passed away in Eufaula in a lawnmower accident. Sadly, after all of that, he died in an accident such as that, and they just dedicated a park to him. And one of the SOG men in attendance sent me some stuff from the event. Bud was in Vietnam too. He's a real killer. He's one of the most recent Lancers I've been in touch with, and all of them are stellar guys. Most of them are all slicks, and like you saw them flying without any doors on the helicopter. I mean, it's oh, okay. I thought he said, okay, he's a troll. Okay, Jason. He thinks I was in Vietnam too. He's a real killer. Okay. I don't know if that's a troll, Poncho, or not, but I may have to edit you out if that is, because what a great thing to put on someone's history podcast. Um, but I'll be in touch with y'all. Yeah, Jason, I'm not at all. Thank you guys, Daniel, Jason, Mr. Terry, you guys, Brady. I think he already had to check out for work. Cool Hand Luke, great questions, brother. I hope y'all are ready for tomorrow. Lone Wolf, great suggestion. I am starting to do single screen more. And I did speak to Terry, not Terry. We will have Terry on this month, but I spoke to Tony Love this morning, and we're gonna have a Tony Love Halo show this month. So we're gonna have some fun stuff going on. So I will see you guys here in a little while. I'll put out some stuff for the Cliff podcast to get us ready for tomorrow. So see y'all. Hope y'all have a good afternoon. Be safe, and please be here tomorrow. Let's have some fun.